Yeah, hope things are well, man. How's the city?
City's good. City's good. I was just actually making a video. So I went over the past year, I've been waking up in utter pain. Like my back's been killing me. I wake up like an 80-year-old man. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with me? So I do some stuff to get back to a point of, feeling okay throughout the day. I could train a little bit. I've been primarily working on upper body stuff, but I was like, all right, I got to figure this out. Finally, I went to a doctor. They made me get an MRI, and they're saying my L5S1 is just completely crushed. Like there's no cartilage back there. They're like, it's a simple surgery. You fuse your back, put 2 screws in. I'm like, no shot. And they're like, well, you could get some shots in it. And I'm like, all right, again, we're putting a Band-Aid over a gushing wound here. So for me, I'm like, all right, I'm going to go on this journey, kind of share with everybody online as to how I kind of rehab this, because there's shit I do that makes it feel better, and I refuse to believe that like you should stop doing anything. This doctor is like, well, you should never squat again, and you should never pick anything up off the floor again. And I go, I go, yeah, I go, with all due respect, that's crazy. You don't work out. You don't know the power of, strengthening your body. Like this is good for, he's like, oh, if you were an accountant, this would matter. I go, it doesn't matter it matters for everybody. Everybody should have the ability to reach down and get something off the ground.
Stronger, better across the board. Like being with your skeleton, whatever the positions you're in, it's never leaned to a worse life.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's no support whatsoever. So, I mean, what stuff are you doing that makes it feel better?
Just reshaping the way I train, right? So like right now I haven't deadlifted normal. I haven't done a conventional deadlift in a while. I've been doing RDLs, which feel okay. Single leg deadlifts feel okay. Some split squats instead of regular squats, pendulum squats instead of regular squats. What else have I been doing? Kind of cable front loaded squats with a wedge feel great. So there's stuff that makes it feel good. And like the next day I'll feel significantly better when I do that stuff.
What about like deadlifts? That?
What's up?
What about like a trap bar deadlift or anything like that?
Yeah. Like I've done trap bar a couple of times, just reaching down too far. Right. That's when I start to feel it. So I'll build
an elevated handle.
Yeah. So that's okay. It feels better. Yeah, I'll elevate the hand. I'll put the higher handles on, or I'll put them on blocks or something just to pull it off the ground. So it's not bad. If I put a barbell on my back, that's the worst. That's when I like feel it. So yeah. I just don't do that anymore, But there are points where it's like, and he told me, he's like, well, if you want to run, you could run. I was like, well, running is kind of the thing that I feel the most. I was like, when I start to run, I'm like, the first half a mile is just utter pain. And then
show how little they grit. They're like, running should be great. I'm like, the bone jarring over and over pounding on possible pavement. Like that's cool.
Well, that's what I said. I go, the pounding is what kind of irritates it. And then like anything like loaded on my back, I was like, but there's stuff I've done and stuff I do on a daily basis that feels really good, Right. But it was the same thing. I was just telling the story as I was telling the camera, and I'm going to put it up on Instagram. When I was in high school, I got dropped on my head. A guy tried to head throw me, and I like stopped it, rolled through, ended up pinning him, which was great. But I walked off the mat, and I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with my arm? So I compressed the nerve in my C3, C4. And they were like, listen, you're never going to wrestle again. You're going to never lift weights again. It's over. This is it. And I was 16 years old. I went on and wrestled in college. I did jiu-jitsu for a while. I still do Muay Thai. I made a career out of fitness. And these were the things in my life that had happened where they're like, you're never going to do this again. And I'm like, fuck no. I refuse to believe that.
I wonder about that, right? Like just the way doctors talk, and, especially now I've been through a bunch of surgeries and shit like that. Hearing endless stories of people like you who, doctors say, blah, blah, blah. Is it because we live in such an awful litigious society that doctors just say like, fuck them, tell them they'll never walk again. So anything they do, they'll be happy with. They just lower the bar all the way to nothing instead of giving hope that you could maybe sue them later by saying, you said it'd be better.
Well, that's what I think is the the biggest problem, right? Like I always bring it back to that. The woman who orders the hot coffee spills it on herself and then blames
that
McDonald's.
Story are a lot. Like the nuances of that one, the point you're making, I totally get, but like the whole story of that woman, dude, the burns on her legs are like the coffee they handed wouldn't have been drinkable. I don't know, sometime next week. Like it was fucking new. So like she got like 3rd fucking degree burns because so that coffee spills into her jeans. There's no get away from it. So now that hot liquid is just stuck against your skin, roasting you. So like crotch and legs are like, you can look up photos of it, dude. Like, she had a good reason. She had a good
but it goes back to that idea of like, I don't like, if I trip and fall in New York City and me blame the city,
right?
You know,
it's about accountability and responsibility for the decisions you make. I fully agree.
Exactly. So I think, you know, yes, they should be held to a higher standard, of course, but at the same time, it's like, well, give me some sort of hope, give me some fighting chance, because the way most doctors make it seem is like, this is the end of the world, and you're like, oh, that's not good either. You know, that's not like, no one wants to hear that. It's like, yes, I get you don't want to be sued, and that's terrible that people have to sue them or whatever it may be. But you know, we should hold them to a higher standard because we don't want them cutting people open left and right. But at the same time, like there's got to be some. Like I believe if there's 1% of hope, give me that. You know, I want to be that one.
You know, and maybe that's our problem with the way our medical field being really one direction, and we don't do preventative maintenance at all. We don't talk about type things. We have a complete reactionary society, basically to everything at this point. But we don't have an opportunity because of HIPAA laws or everything else that doctors can't say more of a holistic approach. Maybe you should try this. The options are fucking cut or give pills.
So
like, which one do you want? Because I can't recommend anything else. And it's we've made it that way too.
I think we've come so far that those are the only options.
And you know, I would love for them to be able to say like, well, have you thought about getting with a good physical therapist and figuring out how to maybe decompress those areas through what can we do hanging wise? What can we do? You know, zero gravity treadmills. What can we do? Stem cells. What can we do? All these other options or peptides or, you know, things that we're showing healing from instead of, we would like to cut you and then you should do less.
Well, and I think people need to be more realistic about life too, where it's like, I'm not going to live forever, but the life that I do have, I want to live as graceful as possible. And, you know, part of my mental health is me being able to work out, me being able to move. I think people become more depressed and live worse lives when they're not moving, when they can't do anything. It's, you know, I mean, it is an extreme example, but if you've ever watched My 600-Pound Life, you know, these people are riddled with sickness and depression and everything, and they're just so unhappy with their lives. None of those people you watch on that show are like, life's great, this is wonderful. Can't get out of bed, haven't done shit.
But it's also incredible to me that people on that show, like, it was honestly watching that and The Biggest Loser were kind of a motivator for me to drop weight. I wanted to, and I wasn't ever fucking like gigantic, right? But big from throwing, from lifting, and wanting to get to where I am now. But would always have a reason why I couldn't or excuse and just failed. And so I was watching one of those shows and I'm like, if this motherfucker who weighs 500 pounds can lose the weight and accomplish the goal that he wants to, like, are you telling me he's got more willpower? That he's got more fucking ability than you do? The same guy that saw 400 on the scale and was like, fuck it, we're still good. Red flag enough that he had to go for 100 pounds. Like, you can't fucking out willpower that guy. I have to hold myself to a different standard.
Well, and for the same thing for me, you know, I wrestle with it all the time. Like, there are times, you know, living in New York, it's everybody's like, oh, let's go out to eat. Let's go here and let's go there. And you're constantly drinking and eating. Sometimes I wish I lived like, you know, where there wasn't as many options to go out and eat like shit, drink like stuff. But, you know, something else, you know, a new restaurant opens, you're like, I'll try that. But like those little times, it's like that happens once, maybe twice a week. that adds up to where you start to fall off the wagon a little bit. And I try to hang on.
Compete with it. Like, unless you can't compete with it, because like every other meal that you're doing is so caloric deficit or so really dialed in, like you don't have room for those mistakes. And the weekends are going out for a business meeting that all of a sudden now has 2 drinks in it, and fuck, man, calories are still calories. Like, like, fuck, I knew I needed to have those drinks for the meeting, but god damn it.
Yeah, no, I start to beat myself up over that stuff too. And I'm a huge believer in, enjoying your life. I love a beer. I love a cigar. I enjoy life. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's part of like the mental health aspect of it. But yeah, when you start doing it too much and you start going down that road too far, you're like, oh shit, this is a little bit harder to turn around now.
Yeah, man. And I would think things have got to be like, so your route getting into professional side of health, fitness, wellness industry that we're all came from the reality TV standpoint, like at least where a lot of eyes came from.
Yeah, that's where I got a lot of my following from. But I was really heavy as a kid. I was, I went into high school weighing 235 pounds as a 13-year-old. Yeah. And then I kind of just fell in love with it. I learned, I just constantly started reading magazines, and, I got the Arnold Encyclopedia. I kind of put that as like my holy grail of knowledge. But it was that. And then when I started to train and stuff for television, and I hired my first trainer, I'm like, man, this is really cool. Like, this is amazing. And when I started working with Joe DeFranco years ago.
What was the first show that you were on?
I was on a show called Fresh Meat. It was like part of the Real World Road Rules Challenge shit. So that was the first. So I did my first show back in 2005.
Got it. See, I couldn't remember. I that's probably my favorite thing that I watched on TV, like during that stretch, like through that window of my 20s and stuff like that, man. Like, there was never another show that I ever watched and I was like, fuck, that's the one I always wanted to do.
Yeah. I mean, dude, listen, it was a great time. It was so much fun. And if you watch some of the older episodes, like, I was always like working out in the background. That's when I started to fall in love with it. I felt like 2008, 2009, I started doing like CrossFit. So I would bring a jump rope with me and, an ab mat and bands and all this shit, anything I could stuff in my bag to bring with me, because there's so much downtime. So you're like, yeah, I guess I'll just work out the whole time. But you can only get like, and that's why I tell people, like, when the pandemic hit and they're like, well, I'll just get some bands for my apartment. I'm like, yeah, we're looking at a long stretch of time here. You're going to need more than a fucking band.
No. So, long term, you need to go a little bit heavier than that for damn sure.
Yeah. And I was just talking to somebody too about, they were asking me about the TB12. I've never done it, the whole Tom Brady thing. I was like, what?
Oh, I'm familiar with it.
Yeah. I was like, I've never done it. I don't know the nuances of it, but I was like, I know it involves a lot of band work and things like that. And I go, it's good for maintenance, but there also needs to be some additional thing added to this, right? Tom Brady's and Tom Brady because he's pulling on resistance bands. Tom Brady's playing a lot of sport. He's out there spending 3-4 hours recovering, 3-4 hours working out. Is that the stickiness of it?
For bands now, like, he may not need to figure out his max squat anymore, but there was a point where he determined what max strength was.
For sure. He knows exactly where he needs to be.
Yeah, so. He can't do he can't coast on some maintenance stuff at this point now because he's such a skilled athlete that he has to have the physical side too. Like, you don't get both, and especially you don't get to be the best of all time without it.
And I was saying, I was like, he looks the best he's ever looked. And I was like, he's doing a lot more than just, what you think he's doing.
He's doing everything.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't want people to misunderstand that as everything. I mean, drugs. I mean, everything. Like, his sleep's dialed. His fucking food that he gets every day is dialed. Like, he's not cooking. Like, everything is done for him. Whether, that's meal prep companies or he has a chef. Who fucking knows how Tom Brady lives at this point? But
yeah, I just posted a thing. Russell Wilson put up a thing. He spends over $1 million a year in recovery. Well, he's got
what an investment.
Yeah.
Like, so if he gets 3 more years in his career based on that $1 million that he's invested in himself feeling better, great. What's the ROI on that? Some fucking ridiculous $70 million, not to mention endorsements. Like,
exactly.
throw $1 million at 70 million anytime you guys are offering it.
And that's what I said. I go, you don't have to spend $1 million. I was like, but it says he makes the investment of 1 million a year. I go, because I tell people all the time, I go, training, working out, eating right. I go, don't stop looking at it as an expense. It's like, oh, I got to pay for this. It's like, well, the garage I keep my car in, that's an expense, right? I could cut that back and just try to find a spot on the street instead of spending.
It's an expense.
Yeah. Your health and wellness, I don't think is an expense. It's more of an investment, because think about it, right? When people tell me, oh, I'm buried in medical bills because of my back or my foot or this and that, I'm like, yeah, you could have avoided a lot of that had you have taken better care of yourself.
Especially what we've seen, in the past year with comorbidity due to obesity and other, big, the avoidable health factors.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm not sure where we fall on obesity at this point being an avoidable health factor or not. I still just, if you don't have to be fat, like there's not. It's a math equation. It's you move more and eat less. That's for a really long period of time. It'll work out.
Well, but now it's like you're shamed if you tell people. Like there's this whole movement of hating people who tell people like, hey, you'll feel a lot better. You'll look a lot better. Everything.
I'm okay with the idea that like beautiful is an opinion. And
yeah.
Is an eye of the beholder and can be thought of. You can be beautiful at any shape, size, whatever.
100%.
Can't pretend it's healthy. Like we can't say it's healthy. Nor, and make no mistake, dude, you and I both know this being on the inside, like, being in the industry, people that are shredded, they're not healthy either.
No, I agree. I say that all the time. I go, you can't maintain that size.
Oh, dude, and I think what fucks up a bunch of girls who do bikini or do figure is they get on stage and they get told this is the best they've ever looked, and they're at the least sustainable moment. And like, this is it, and like, this is what I have to do to hold that line of the best I've ever looked. Like, it's impossible.
Well, and I tell people that all the time. I go, when I encourage people to work out and to feel better and to look better, I'm saying, as a human, you should do something physical every day. You should move, yoga, running, whatever it is. I don't care what it is. Just get on some regimen. Treat, your health and wellness, your physical being, like your teeth, right? Like if you're not brushing your teeth on a daily basis, most people will be like, you're a dirtbag. If you're not moving on a daily basis, it's like, I kind of look at it the same way, but I'm not saying you have to look like an Olympian or somebody who's posing on stage. I'm just saying I feel a lot better after I work out. There's something to it, whether you want to believe it or not. There's good things happening within your body after you work out.
There's very, very few times that I've ever convinced myself to train and then afterwards been like, well, that was a waste. It's never been a bummer.
Yeah.
I argue with myself about going. It's fucking crazy. But yeah, I think that if we could be a hair more proactive, and like, why in this last year didn't we hear more about that? We hear all these stories about people working out from home, and we clearly see the gym boom and equipment, which is now impossible to fucking get anything.
It's so hard. Building out the gym right now. I'm building out a new gym right now, and they're like, oh, well, we could get it to you by November. And I'm like, November?
Doing it at a time that, like, there's nothing's available right now. Not wood, not construction equipment. Like, it's the worst time to build stuff.
Yeah. Oh, it's horrible.
Giant city. I can't even imagine the headaches of dealing with doing shit in the city versus, St. Louis was easy. Like, building out my gym in St. Louis is a joke.
Yeah. Here's a perfect example, right? Your gym in St. Louis is probably on the ground floor. Anything heavy, they just wheel it right in.
You got 3,000 feet. I pay about $1,200 a month.
And my rent is quadruple that. And they have to bring it up 5 stories, right? And they're, the guys here in the city are only responsible for dropping everything curbside. And I'm like, what? Curbside? I'm like, what the fuck did I pay for delivery?
Right. No, it's exactly right. Is there just everyone believes there's some fucking magic that gets things from one place to the other?
It's unreal. And then like when the truck pulls up, there's 80 cars there. So you got to carry it over a car. You're like, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. Everything in New York is double and triple as hard.
There's been no part of me that's ever wanted to live there.
I came here for a girl 12 years ago and haven't left.
I do have a feeling about myself that if I ever, for some reason, got immersed, that I couldn't go anywhere else. I think
but that's the problem. It's like there are inconveniences and the conveniences of living in New York are pretty similar. Like I walk outside and I'm like, I could get to anything. There's a coffee shop on every block. There's a bank on every block. There's a gym on every block. It's just the conveniences of being here are great. But I think they're starting to build up in other cities too, where that aren't as overpopulated. I know.
Like St. Louis is like that, right? Like, and that's how I describe. People have asked about, because I can fucking live anywhere I want doing the things that we do currently. Yeah. It's affordable, and realistically, I don't do much outside of like the 5-mile radius of my house. For the most part, that's where the grocery store I go to is, in which now everything's delivered. I don't go to. Yeah. So it's just my house and the gym are the only two places that I exist in this city. Or parks or mountain bike or anything on the outside. And so where that 3-mile radius that I choose to operate out of, it doesn't fucking matter where it's at in the country as long as I've got an airport close.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think for me, my family's all here, like right outside the city in New Jersey. So that's super convenient. And I've kind of dug my feet in a little bit here.
That makes
I named my what?
You're opening a business. Yeah. Your company in New York.
Yeah. It's like everything about me. I just always related to the grit and the grittiness of the East Coast. I've always related to that so much that's what I kind of embodied in a way. So I kept running with it. And now I'm like, oh, well, I guess if I move to Nashville, it's probably not going to be, because I'm going to have to change the name of everything.
A little bit. You just need to franchise out. They'll be like Hard Rock hotels. If only one could dream. Yeah, like that grittiness to the East Coast, like that vibe has always been so clear to me that there's a different work ethic that I find on the East Coast that just has this more ingrained blue collar thing than the West Coast does.
For sure. Yeah, I think you look at cities like New York, Boston, any part of Jersey. It's always like anytime I've spent out in LA, I was out there for a couple months, a lot when I was on television, and it'd be like Monday morning. And I've always kept a job here in New Jersey or New York. And Monday morning, people get up at like 10, 11. They're like, we'll go get lunch and we'll hang out. And I'm like, nobody's got a fucking job here. Like, what's everyone doing? Yeah.
like being out there, it's such a different vibe, right? Like I remember last time I was out, like I had, got an Airbnb in like Hermosa and had got up one morning and gone for a run on the boardwalk and like ran into like 10 kids who had ridden up on bikes with like high school surf club sweatshirts and were surfing before school. And I'm like, yo, this is way different than growing up in Louisiana.
Oh my God. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that would be great. Could you imagine that? Like out here, everybody gets up. It's like 7, 8 in the morning. Everybody's pissed off. They're like sitting on the train. They don't even want to say hello to anybody. Like part of that I love. And then part of that I'm like, man, I guess I could do without some of that.
I like knowing both. I like know that I keep traveling west and not east.
So you you grew up in Louisiana and then moved to
Louisiana the whole way through, man, until St. Louis, the first place I've lived not in Louisiana ever, and that's like 2.5 years now.
Oh yeah, and clearly you like it.
Yeah, it's good enough. And it's a really weird thing to say, but I like our house. I like the neighborhood we live in. But I mean, I could very easily put that in another city. It's not St. Louis. I don't have any attachment to being in St. Louis. I like my Louis.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think family kind of grounds me here. But yeah, I feel the same way. I'm like, I look at parts of Florida or something. I'm like, man, this would be great to live here. The weather's great. It's fun. And my uncle had just moved down he's been there for like 4 or 5 years. He's in Cocoa Beach. Yeah. And I go down there. I'm like, this is a pretty good lifestyle. He's like, yeah, it's so much cheaper. I'm like, here in New York, I'm like, for what I could get, for what I pay for my apartment in New York, I could get a mansion somewhere else.
Dude, it's like that. I mean, essentially, St. Louis it's free, like housing thing, and
Yeah.
luckily,
What does like a 1-bedroom apartment go for in St. Louis? Like with all the bells and whistles?
So my media guy Brant lives not very far from us. So he's in a good area, like in a kind of a hip area that would, I guess, be like a Williamsburg if
Yeah.
who says that.
Yeah.
His apartment is, I think, like $750.
Holy, it's under $1,000.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So Bonnie and I built our house.
Yeah.
Gutted it and had it completely redone. It's like a row house in the same area, growing up, bars, everything kind of there. One street off of whatever the main drag would be.
Yeah.
250, 265.
Wow.
And it's
that's after the renovations and stuff.
Yeah, that's after. That's like, here's the keys to your new home.
That's incredible. Yeah.
When I look at stuff like that, like, not having some of the conveniences of being there or LA, one of the big ones right now is tough for podcasts just because no one comes to St. Louis.
Yeah.
That'll be easier to grow, with just access to humans.
Do you see St. Louis growing in population at all, like through all this?
Not enough that it's going to change whether or not I stay here long term.
Yeah. Well, you see cities like Nashville, Austin. I mean, Austin's had such a boom.
Crazy.
Yeah, like you look at that town, you can name people who've moved there. Like aside from like people you might just know, it's like, oh yeah, Elon Musk moved there, and Rogan moved there, and you're like, shit. That's
a lot of people that like that all started changing about like 7 or 8 years ago, and then ramped up. And Austin's got its own fucking problems too. It was never meant to have 2.5 million people in it.
Yeah, for sure.
Grew faster than infrastructure is ready for.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see that in a lot of cities. Like even Nashville. Nashville is another one where I know so many people who moved there and they love it, but like the infrastructure, I don't think is really there for that many people.
And like I look at like further friends who've now moved to like Montana or Idaho or places like that, and those places are super, super rad. But not having like Uber Eats is a thing that I just don't know that I can deal with again. I just feel that I'm willing to not have that convenience.
Yeah, I saw you went on that bike tour with Steffi and Hayden and stuff.
Yeah,
and that looked cool. But like when you think about like traveling those parts of the country where there's really nothing there, you're like, where are we going to get a cup of coffee today?
And at least that was just West Coast. We rode from LA to St. Louis Obispo and back. Like that was straight up the 5 or the 101 and then down the highway all the way back. And even that, like, yeah, you're in the middle of fucking nowhere a lot of places.
Well, dude, I've been to parts of Malibu, or like you're driving through Malibu and you're like, God, it's a pain in the ass to get anywhere. Like you call an Uber. Like here, I could get an Uber in 2 minutes in New York City. Right? When I wait 15 or 20 minutes for an Uber, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? It's like, damn phone won't work.
Yeah, I don't have 20 million people that live with me. It's that changes. So whenever you start, so you wrestled in college. Where
I went to Montclair State in New Jersey. Yeah.
So finished up school and then pretty quick get into TV?
Yeah. So what happened was I graduated. So I went to an open tryout for the show my senior year. It was the fall of my senior year. So I was like, this was 2004. So like September, October 2004, I went to an open casting call. I was dating this girl at the time and she wanted to go and try out. And I was like, yeah, let's go. It'll be fun. And then a year later, so I graduated. Thank God I was a finalist for a show that would have started and it would have been The Real World Austin. It would have started January of 2005. I didn't end up getting on. It was, but they kept me in the loop. And then they asked me to do Key West in May. And then I ended up doing my first show in September of 2005, but I had graduated. Had I have done that first show, I would have never finished school. I couldn't even think of like in my life in the last 15, 20 years when I would have been like, yeah, here's a good time to go back and finish that last semester.
Never.
You know?
Also,
Yeah.
at some point though, what value would it have brought you versus that other thing?
I mean, just the times when people are like, did you graduate college? I'm like, yeah. Yeah, like
no one's ever looked at the sheet of paper I have from LSU, so it fucking gives a shit.
Yeah. No one's ever been like, let me see what you graduated with. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, like the whole institution of school, and when you hear what people are paying, I have friends who, you know, the girl who works for me, she's buried in fucking debt from like she went to Villanova, and it's like over $100,000 worth of bills. And she's
22, 24. Like, yo, it's crazy. You've just dug such a big hole to start from. Like, I got lucky, you know, myself and Bonnie both. You know, both of us were on athletic scholarship, so at least we both through school without debt.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I know people who are like buried up to their eyeballs in debt. And even if you get a great job, you start yourself off in the hole, right? Like they're teaching you, all right, listen, this is how you start life, in the fucking hole. Like you got to pay off on it.
Yeah, we've got two really close friends that are both physical therapists, went to school, and then, you know, now, you know, two kids live outside of Austin, but they've got $250,000, $300,000 worth of physical therapy school debt.
It's crazy. It's crazy. But even if you do well, it's a lot to pay that off.
You know, doing well is a way different number than it used to be.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
We all do live with a lot more luxury than our generation grew up with. Like we're kind of that weird. I find us a very interesting turning point of a generation.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be 40 in 2 years. You're right around the same age as me. Right?
We're the same age. Yeah.
So we're the first generation that had the no internet and internet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that cat has come out of the bag in our lifetime and in a sweet spot that we've got to benefit from it.
For sure. Yeah.
The other one is like, we're the first generation who's getting to figure out this online entrepreneur thing.
Yep.
This will forever be a thing now.
Mm-hmm.
And so not only that, like, because I don't have a better term that equals less fame than real fame, I'm just going to use fame. I understand the difference in, say, The Rock and like the people who know what I do, but there is some level of infamy there, right?
Absolutely.
We're the first people that stumbled into being famous. Or I'm sorry, we're the last people.
Yeah.
Everyone from here out, it'll happen on purpose. Like, this is because you said I do this. The rest of us are doing things, and then it's like, oh, so that can do this now?
Yeah. Yeah. And you see it. It's like there are some older people that I know who have stumbled upon this, like, oh, if I just start putting up content of all the shit I know, I can make some serious money. Then you also have, you know, these younger kids that it's like so natural to them, right? I remember having AOL or playing with AOL at somebody else's house. I was probably 14 or 15 years old, whereas my nephew is 6 and he's got an iPad, knows how to go online, looks up YouTube videos and stuff. I'm like, shit, that's impressive. Like I always compare it to like wrestling or doing judo or jiu-jitsu or something. You know, what people in our age who first started now are learning the basics. Kids who started years ago, they're fluent. They're so much more advanced because they learn the basics at an age where you could soak up that information.
They're actually getting fluency. Like, different thing that like all kids have some ability of video editing, or at least understand the concepts of video editing, graphic design, type of things, and content creation for that matter. You know, I do feel weird about it to hear, like, you know, a friend of mine says, you know, well, my kid wants to be an influencer because they don't have a for it. And like, there's part of me that's like, and then there's also part of me that's like, it is really cool. It's really cool that I get to do any of this for a living. So like, if you can figure it out, please fucking, you should.
Yeah. I think a lot of times we see the successful people who do it. It's like anything else.
Of course.
like you've been successful at it. You've figured it out. But think about how many people have podcasts who don't even come close to what you're
doing. And I feel like I have no fucking clue what I'm doing. Make no mistake. Yeah. I'm not sitting here like, we have figured this out. Like, fuck, I know all the, like, no my shit. Like, that's how I feel about it all the time, is like, I everyone, you want it to be better the same way that I want to get better at competing and doing anything else. It's just a fun progress and a very, very complicated puzzle to constantly figure out.
For sure. And you have to be good at so many different skills. Like you said, it's like, graphic design, video editing, lighting, all this stuff kind of comes into play when you're trying to make great content. I find myself all the time. It's like, I just bought this new stand with a light and a microphone and all this shit, because you want the content to be better, and then you see some people who figure out and do it like low level, but it still looks good. So they figure out a new way of doing it,
Yeah. And I love that side of it. I really do love like the hustle of what like my business life is at this point. Like I really enjoy, and especially because I feel like it's all me doing it. I don't think I could ever work for someone again. I don't know that.
No, I know I can't. I can't answer to anyone. I don't want anybody to give me fucking rules or regulations. Like, I've seen what you did. I started doing the t-shirt thing years ago, right? When I first got on television, I'm like, I love t-shirts. I go to concerts, I buy t-shirts. I go to fucking events, I'll buy the t-shirt. I'm that guy. I'm the idiot always buying t-shirts, right? And when I was doing CrossFit, I'd buy a t-shirt at every gym I went to, right? I had thousands of t-shirts. So I started with that. And then my first thing when I started the event, like the Strong New York event, I'm like, I'm just going to make a bunch of sick shirts. Right? I love a good t-shirt. And then I saw, and I'm like, all right, but I haven't figured out. But like, I saw what you did. And that's why I started buying a lot of your stuff. Cause I'm like, dude, this is cool shit. Like it's just what it is and what it represents. You're like, all right, this makes sense to me. And you see so many people do that. I see so many people start brands and lines and it just doesn't even work out. But it's just a natural progression of like, hey, I enjoy this. If it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And it's the same thing with the gym. It's like you see somebody else do it, or a restaurant, right? So many restaurants open up. You see somebody, you're like, oh man, that looks fun. I want to try it. You have to have a real love and a passion for it, because it does suck when it's not working out. But you got to just stay on the grind and continue to figure it out.
And that's the exact word. It is the grind. And the difference in the 9-to-5 life, and you have a job that you're busy versus like whatever this entrepreneur thing is, this especially like multiple, I think fucking 9 or 10 different revenue streams. Not all of them are very big, but I have a bunch of varied options, right? It's there's no autopilot.
No.
To this life.
No, there's not.
That's one of the things I love about it, but I also understand how that fucks people up. That you're constantly uncomfortable, constantly trying to figure things out. And like, just because I'm making money right now does not mean I'm making money in 6 months at all.
That's what I tell people. That's what I tell people all the time.
Shitload more.
People are always like, you're always working. You have no idea how many relationships I've been in or started to, kind of cultivate. And they're like, well, you need to take some time off for yourself and you need to do your own thing. I go, baby, when this train stops, the money stops coming in. It has to keep moving. Also, I'm like,
I love it.
Yeah, I do. I do enjoy it.
I love doing this.
Yeah. Well, when I hit a home run, I'm like, that was me. I did that. I fucking made that happen. Right. Like I'll buy 50, maybe 100 shirts at a time. And then, the girl who works with me, she's like, oh, we sold out of those. I'm like, fuck yeah. All right, good, great, win. Or, I get a new client because I put up some good content. It's like, all right, good, that's me. Or I'm opening my own gym. It's like, it's all my own money. Everything I'm doing is like myself, because I don't even want to answer to a fucking investor saying like, oh, you should do it this way. It's like, fuck off. Like, I'm going to do it my way. And if I fail, I'm okay with the consequences. Why I loved wrestling, and I tell people this all the time. Why?
Yeah. So we were talking about college wrestling was kind of your first experience with now everything depended on you.
Yeah.
Success or failure, and how much you immediately like that.
Yeah. For me, it's like when I first started training, in high school, basically. Sorry, when I first started training, I started to realize that um, if I worked harder, then I would do better, right? And I always wanted to outwork the other guy. I knew I was never going to outskill the other guy, so I knew I had to outwork him, and that's kind of what I did. And I enjoyed the idea of like, hey, I'm supporting my team. I'm doing what I have to do for my team, but for myself, I could win and lose, and everything that I needed to do relied on what I was capable of doing or how much work I wanted to put in. It's similar to what we were talking about with work ethic and what we do now. Like, yes, we love it. And if you don't love it, then you got to figure out why you're doing
it. If you don't love doing this style of a living,
yeah,
fuck, it would be so hard to like just grind through this and force yourself to do it the way like a job would have to be.
Well, I tell people all the time, it's like, like when everybody's like, oh, job security. I do my job because of job security and I get a paycheck. And, people who are teachers and stuff, they're like, well, I love the job security. I love that I get my summers off. And I'm like, well, if you're not doing something with your summers, what the fuck's the point of having it off? Like, what are you really accomplishing? One, two, for me, it's like, yeah, I like the hustle. I like the grind. I like knowing that, like, if I put in more work, I can earn more revenue. And on a daily basis, I could continue to do what interests me and what I love to do. I use this example all the time, out of college. And when I got on television, I started taking a lot of acting classes and I'm like, I want to be an actor. I want to be an actor. And then I would get a script and I'm like, I don't want to fucking read this. I don't get it. I'm not into it. When you meet people who really want to be actors and you see the shit they do, you're like, all right, I probably don't want to be an actor too much.
No. Do you think that was just because the TV thing like had worked, and the way to continue going that direction would be to act?
Yeah.
Like, otherwise, you're doing the reality show thing, and that's not a long-term game.
No, yeah. Well, I have a buddy of mine who's made a very nice living continuing to do show after show after show.
Right on.
Yeah. But
I mean, like 30 years? What the?
Yeah. But he's one guy out of 300, 400 people. So he's, yeah. So for me, and I knew I didn't want to do it. It's like, I enjoyed competing and, doing the show and doing everything that I was doing. But for me to do that at 40, I don't want to fucking do that. I don't want to live in a house in a bunk bed with 20 other fucking people.
I can't stomach the like I would love the competition side of all of it. But I just don't think I could handle the other 20 hours a day that I'm in a house with someone who's 22 anymore. Like, I just be like, fucking 40. I don't fucking want to stay up late. You're very loud and you don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's what everybody said. They were like, was it fun? I said, yeah, when I was 22, it's great. You're having a ball. Like, that's what you want to do. And I don't get the people who do the reality shows like The Bachelor and shit, right? Oh. You're on that, and there's really no point. And people are like, oh, they won The Bachelor. I go, what the fuck did you win? A shitty date? What did you win? Like, there's no prize to be had there. Like, you're in a house with a bunch of people who are only there to be famous. Like, nobody's like, oh man, can't wait to find love on television.
It's a very strange time that all of that, like, I think at some point those had a genuine thing to them. But now, like, it's a factory, dude. Like, I mean, it just feels like every one of the reality shows, formula, they have it so good now of what people are willing to watch that they don't break formula at all.
Well, the good thing is that, one, reality television is cheap to make because talent's cheap, production's cheap. So they don't mind producing it, right? You think about the difference between a show like the Jersey Shore, which had groundbreaking ratings, but they basically shot on handhelds with a bunch of people. The first season didn't cost them anything to make. Whereas, like, think of the first season of like Game of Thrones. Cost them hundreds of millions of dollars to fucking put this thing on because you have talent that you have to pay, you have costumes and all this shit. Like, there are so many expenses that go into that. They say that the shows that do the best aren't the big one, like the Good Morning America, because now you're paying all this talent and stuff. But or like Ellen, right? You're paying Ellen's, and you're paying her whole staff, and you're paying for people to come out there. But then you have something like cheap, kind of like a Joe Rogan show. Production levels low, right? And it's doing the same numbers, and it's making
cost the same as mine. Like that's the thing, right? Like once you have X, like that's how much production costs to do any of these.
Yeah. So it's find that sweet spot of like keeping costs down. Like I was reading this book. What the hell is it called? It was basically like a book on how to become a millionaire. And they were saying that most of America's millionaires aren't what you think they would be. They're not these, oh my God, I created this company or blah, 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 whatever it is. It's people who just saved up. And it's not like how much you make, it's how much you save. And a lot of these people were saving money and, eventually became wealthy because they weren't spending as much. And the same thing goes for a show or a concept. And I'm trying to like with the gym, I was just actually going over the numbers of like how much shit I want to order. And I was running classes, 30, 40 person classes last summer in the park in New York City with no overhead. My only overhead was how much shit I was buying. I was buying like new toys every week. Like gyms would go out of business and I'd buy up their equipment.
Yeah.
But I was running classes outside, with basically no overhead and having 30, 40 people. Now I'm going to open up a gym hoping to have 30 or 40 people a class. And my overhead has quadrupled.
Right.
So it's, do I need a ton of equipment or could I just make it fun with the least amount of equipment, And
it depends on what your goal is, right? Like if your goal is you want to have a gym and create the space and have this community and strength as part of a lifestyle for people, doing it with 40 people in the park without equipment isn't the answer to that.
Yeah.
If what Kenny wants to do is make as much money as possible, this is the smartest route.
Yep. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. But like my job was always or what I feel like it is to service people as best as I can. So last year I didn't have access to anything. Everything was shut down. Couldn't be in a gym. So I made do with what I had. Now it's like, okay, well, I mean, half this shit's on back order for another 5-6 months because of everything. But I want to be able to service people as best as I can. And if everybody kind of had that mentality, like whether I'm a pizza guy or I'm a janitor or I'm vice president of a company, if I could service my clients and my staff as well as I can, give them the best of everything that I possibly can, then I truly believe I'll be successful. And I don't do it. Yeah, like obviously the goal is to make money on it.
Whole,
what?
Yeah, that mindset shift would change our culture as a whole.
Yeah.
It's just the idea of how can I help? Right? Like those words alone are probably like the biggest hack to life that I've ever been given. Like that's the best advice I ever had. Is we were getting ready to go on a trip on the Grand Canyon. It was a 2-week rafting trip. I'm with Kelly Starrett and a bunch of other friends, and Kelly, who's done a bunch of rafting trips, and like our guides are all studs. They're all Juliet's like former world championship team members, and then Juliet's in our group. So there's like 6 world champion rafters with us. And Kelly's like, look, the 4 most important words of this whole trip are how can I help? If you walk up to anyone doing anything and those are your first words, this trip goes smooth for all 20 people.
Yeah.
And that's been true in life since. How can I help?
Yeah. And I think so many people don't want to be so vulnerable. They don't want to be like, or some people aren't as genuine with you, right? Like when I say like I want to help, I'm like, all right, this may cost me time, this may cost me money, whatever it is, but I want to help you. I want to be able to help you. I love the idea of me being able to service other people because I do get a sick thrill from watching people succeed. I think that's one of my hacks in life. And what I realized early on is when you help someone succeed with really no want for yourself, right? There's no me helping this person isn't going to get me anything but the joy of just helping them. And I think that's helped me out a lot is that you do it so much and you accumulate so many wins in your corner for other people that it starts to come back to you.
I think another part of that too is just confidence in general, right? As a person, I think that it's a backwards way to get to it. Than I think most people think the forward attack is, of like
Yeah.
building success, building self-worth, doing all this. Whereas if you're staying on this side of the how can I help, and you're helping people and they're getting wins, what you're doing is you're becoming valuable.
Yeah.
You're
Yep.
invaluable. You're so valuable to people that you're helping. And then you know that. You know that you're not replaceable to these people. And that's where the confidence comes from to do the other things. So the more that you can kind of stay in that realm and that thought process of like, yeah, how do I make more people better? And that the side effect of that is what's going to make my life improve.
Yeah. No, I mean, like even what I'm going through now with my back, I'm like, all right, this is going to suck, but it's going to force me to learn more so that one day and that's what I said. I was like, this is going to suck for me, even if I have to get the surgery or whatever it may be. For me, I'm like, well, this is only going to make me a better coach and a better trainer because now I know what it feels like, right? Like I never would tell somebody to go run a marathon, having never ran a marathon myself, So for me to be like, I understand back pain. I understand what could come of it. And I deal with the repercussions of that. And I want to be able to help as many people as I possibly can. My clientele is, 35 to 55. And that's where I'd like to stay because those are the people, our generation, a little bit older than us, a little bit younger than us, who, need it the most. I think when people look at life and they're like, well, my life's over as soon as I get married and have kids. I shouldn't work out anymore. I don't have the time, blah, blah, blah. But those are the people that need it the most, right? Like a 25-year-old. What?
Yeah, they're absolutely the ones that need it the most.
Yeah. Yeah. And like a 25-year-old, one probably doesn't have the income to afford it. Two doesn't really need it because they're not at that point where they're falling apart already. It's like, oh, I got a couple kids. I have what? Like for me, it's like, here, I want to get you in, get you doing as many good things as you possibly can that'll keep you maintained and keep you healthy, and then get you out the door because I know you're a busy guy or a busy girl, whatever you have going on. So that's what I try to do. It's like, and that's my bread and butter. It's like, I want to give you as much attention, as much time as I possibly can, get you feeling as good as you possibly can today so that you can attack the day so you don't have to bust your asses on it.
I love that mentality that you're talking about there, right? That like, I'm going to get you to feeling as good as I can.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not talking about kicking the shit out of your clients. There's such a different mindset to that I think one of the shifts, and I think people have this negative connotation to training and athletics because they think that you're kicking your ass when instead, if you can shift this to like, you're doing yourself a favor.
Yeah.
This is the self-help. This is the fucking mental health work. This is the actual doing self-care, is
Yeah.
taking care of the physical machine. And like, of course the brain isn't going to operate very well if it's fucking gunked up with all this bullshit that it's got to sort out all the time.
Yeah. I think I just started reading Starting Strength, Mark Rippetoe's book.
Yeah.
And I've been wanting to read it for the longest time. And I finally was like, forget it. I'll just start, And the first the first chapter, basically how he breaks down that we wouldn't be here if we weren't the strongest versions of ourselves. And that our worth for thousands of years was how healthy our bodies were. Can we farm? Can we hunt? Can we climb? Can we do all these things physical? It's only in the last couple hundred years, or not even, your worth and your wealth is basically built around how much money you have, or, your house or whatever it may be. But it's still so important to be as physically strong as we possibly can. That transcends everything else. I think when you see people who are physically in shape and take care of themselves, it kind of carries over into everything else they do. Very rarely do you have somebody who is in great shape, who's not kicking ass in every other aspect of life.
You run into a few, but that's only because the obsession only gets to point. Like, it depends on how physically fit and shredded they are, right? Like, if they've gotten to a point where they're competing and getting on stage, like, everything else may be taking a back seat. But there's some, right? But those are people that we're trying to help. Those people have their fucking thing. And stoked on that, and they understand that the road they're going down is also not a long time. And right on. Pour the fucking coals to it and let's see how far you can go. But
I would always tell people, like, when I was running a couple of CrossFit gyms, I had my own, I ran a couple of big CrossFit gyms, coached at a bunch. And I would tell people, I'm like, listen, stop chasing the competitive side of it. It's great to be competitive. I 100% want you to be competitive. But like, if you're trying to be a competitor, it's not going to last long. Like the lifespan of an athlete in that sport is very short. You know, you're beating the shit out of yourself, and it's exhausting. There's really no time off. There's no down season, you know, so you got to work your ass off. And it's like, when you're a lawyer or a doctor, you know, for you to maintain that, it's just unrealistic. It's like starting a keto diet. It's like, oh, you're never going to fucking eat carbohydrates again. Like, I don't know. I mean, for me, it's unrealistic. It's like every once in a while, I got to have a piece of pizza.
No, they're right. Yeah, it's people want things to be this very, very simple. Like, well, I will draw this line in the sand, and now I am that, and this is how I will be forever. Instead of giving yourself some ability to have grace and make some mistakes, and maybe look, learn what you found that's really important from this thing and move on. Right? Like, I found out how to get really strong when I was competing in powerlifting. And while I don't want to train that way anymore because I'm not chasing max strength, that doesn't make those lessons not valuable to whatever my pursuit of strength still is.
Yeah.
And so that's most people need just this general help, and then trying to figure out how to invest back in themselves, which people don't understand at all. And that's part of the taking care of the diet, taking care of the food, you know, what we talked about with some of these athletes, right? Like right now for me in my life and with business or anything like that, like, and the same thing that you're doing, you know, I will bet on me. I know I show up. I know I'll do the work. I know I won't sleep. I know I can figure it out. And I know I'm not scared to fail. And so, like, fuck it. I'll absolutely bet on me. And so that's where the investment goes. That's where my time and money all goes toward, is whatever can make this thing more kick ass to do more rad shit.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think, you know, that's what you start to do. You start to gamble on yourself a little bit more. You know, I had some money a couple months ago before I started, you know, working on the gym, and it's like, here, you got, you know, a nice chunk of change, and I could either invest it in the stock market and, you know, try to take the, you know, try to gamble on this, you know, idea or stock, or, you know, or I could gamble on myself and be like, okay, let me try this out. So
dude, why wouldn't you gamble on yourself? At least I feel like I'm playing the game then.
Yeah. It's like when you're putting all this money into something else, it's like, have I heard people win? Sure. But I've also heard of people lose. I've also seen people win on black and also lose their shirt on it. So
yeah, there's a reason I'm not rolling to the casino with all my cash and saying,
yeah, let's see how this works out.
Playing today, I'll double my income. This is smart.
Yeah.
Oh man, but I love the idea now, you know, having that, again, that confidence that I know that I problem solve. I know that I can work. I know that I'm not so bullheaded that I can listen to small failures and be like, something's going wrong that direction. I smell it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Attention now instead of waiting for the room to be on fire.
No, it's so true. You know, I think it's realizing as you get older, you gain a little more wisdom. I think I was even going to say this about, you know, kind of the fitness industry and or any industry for that matter. It's like when you're so submerged in it, you don't understand what other people are going through outside of it, right? Like we know, you're like, well, I know all the lessons I need to learn about how to build strength and how important it is for my body. But to explain that to somebody who's never even, you know, they don't know how good it feels to be stronger.
The masses still talk about toning. Like the masses still think that lifting weights is going to immediately make women turn into men. Like, the masses are so far behind what even we believe beginner knowledge is.
Mm-hmm.
The trick is trying to convince them who also, like, that realm of people, to me, like, they want to believe it's magic. It's easier than understanding that it's just hard work done all the time. And that's why, you know, they're like, you know, friends of mine that, you know, how many times I've had friends reach out and be like, yeah, I'm just trying to get back into it. And I'm like, what do you mean back into it? I've never fucking stopped since I was 13. Like,
yeah, it's true.
There's been way more windows. I've had shorter windows of not training in that time than the times that like, oh man, I haven't lifted in 3, like, and even if I wasn't lifting, I was doing something else more.
Yeah. Well, that's what I said. I told people, I go, the longest possible time I probably went without training was when I tore my shoulder back in 2012, 2013. And after like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, my doctor's like, oh, you shouldn't really move at all. So I like taped my arm to my shoulder chest so it wouldn't like rip the stitches out and stuff. And I went for a run. And I got on a bike and I was pedaling on the bike and I was trying to do as little as possible to get my arm to move, and everybody's like, you're crazy, you're crazy. I go, I'm going insane not moving. Like I'm going to end up blowing my brains out. So it's either I tear the stitches in my shoulder or I fucking blow my brains out.
People don't understand how important it is. Like look, maybe not everyone's psychopaths like we are, but I don't sit still well. This isn't the thing I do. And so finally in my life where my inability to focus on things or be able to sit still or do any of this other shit, which is paid poorly for me in all of my education, I finally found a thing. And like, you don't get to take it. You don't get to take it.
I think we have so many similarities in that regard. It's like, I'm always, what else could I do? What more can I do? I'm not going to stop. I won't sleep. I don't, I
sleep another time. There's a line, a silly ass line from Rick and Morty, that I've used for a lot of stuff. And it's just, different perspective and like what restraints that we put on stuff as a society just because, well, we invent things like days and weeks, work schedule, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, he's like, did you sleep at all last night? And he responds, he's like, what, I have to sleep every night now? Nighttime's half of all time. And I'm like, I really like that. Like, I don't need to sleep every day, nor do I need to eat every day for that matter. I can probably manage just fine being a bit more uncomfortable.
And I like that idea. I think so many people are like so obsessed with these like norms, these restrictions that we put on ourselves. It's like, well, I need to do this right now. It's like, I don't know. I feel like the only things I need to do are die and pay my taxes. Those are like the two things I need to do. It's like,
yeah. And I mean, one of those just has a bigger consequence.
And well, I found out the hard way why the one that you actually have to do that has a bigger consequence.
The taxes. With like prize winnings and
dude, I could tell you a story back in 07, 08. I had a shitty accountant who really screwed me on that. And yeah, let's just put it this way. I'd rather owe money to the mob or the cartel than fucking owe money to the U.S. government.
What's the most money that you got from like a show, like a challenge win or?
So it's bullshit because now these like the shows that are on now, like someone just told me like the kid who won the last show won $1 million. I'm like,
they have to be. But,
dude, I won 3 times. Had I won $1 million every time, I probably wouldn't be in New York. That's for sure. But at the same time, like I won probably 3 shows in a row. I won 3 and I took second on 3. Okay. Right? So every time I won, I think the most I ever won was 75,000.
Okay. So
which is like a nice chunk of change, but after the government takes their half and then they took even more.
Like you definitely justified like that time of work. You know what I mean? Like if it isn't making 500 grand, sure it isn't. But I would have done this challenge thing, and this now it essentially affords me the free time to chase whatever I want the rest of the year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's definitely, it allowed me to, I had that job, I was doing that, and then I had another job, and that allowed me to save up enough where it's like, that's when I started training, where I wasn't making the first 3-4 years you're training. I didn't make shit. When I hear about kids who are like, oh, I started training, I started an online program making fucking 600,000 a year. I'm like, I'm not even making that now.
Oh, same. Fuck it. And the only thing that proves, man, is there's money to be made. Right.
Yeah. I truly believe that. The more I see it, the more I'm like, all right, people want help. And if they need help and if you prove your worth, then they'll spend the money,
There's going to be charlatans. That's never going to go away, right? Like we had CrossFit coaches when CrossFit started. We have shitty powerlifting coaches. We have shitty people in every single profession.
Yep.
In the online training space or any of that, there's going to be charlatans. They just don't hang out very long. Also, look, man,
I think
if that works for you, who the fuck am I to say it doesn't?
Yeah, it's true. I see people and I'm like, I want to hate on this person, but there's something I admire. I mean, they believe their own bullshit more than I believe the truth.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. There's definitely people that do that, and I just go, fucking good for you. Because I couldn't. Like whatever gimmick or whatever thing that they're sold into is just but a fair side of that, and I was talking about that with a buddy because we were just looking at different things, different brands and different ways that they attract clientele, and it's building that relationship with your customers and all that. And because I've never been someone who wants to be part of someone else's thing ever, it's really hard for me to understand the mindset of people that want to buy in and have that like I don't understand sports fans.
Buddy, we are the same fucking person.
I don't fucking understand. Like, what do you mean you like the Buffalo Bills?
Or they're like, my team won. I go, your team? Right. What do you mean? You had to buy your jersey.
Right. And I get it from the tribal standpoint of like, the last time men were part of a thing, most men in their lives is high school football.
Yeah.
That's the last time they're part of a thing. And then I totally understand why military dudes have such a hard time transitioning back out. Is you got to take like that high school football group mentality, move that into a professional thing with way higher risk, and then became adults.
Yep.
Doing that at 25 or 30, fuck, I bet nothing else makes sense.
Yeah.
Shit about these people at the office. There's no stakes there.
Well, think about CrossFit. It's you ask any CrossFitter, aside from the high level guys who are just fucking freak maniacs who could work out in a basement with one light on by themselves all day long.
Yeah.
The average person who does CrossFit, the millions and millions of people who did it around the world, the first thing they say they love about CrossFit is the community. It now gave them a place to belong. Right. Whereas before that, they didn't belong to anything. Think about it. Most people didn't play college sports. People joined fraternities. They like when I hear about people paying to be a part of a fraternity or sorority, I'm like, I would have never done that. And I didn't do it. I'm the same way. Like I could give a fuck less about sports. When people are, do you watch the NBA finals? No. You watch the Super Bowl? No, I didn't watch that either. It just was never a thing for me. I love live music because I love the energy.
I like individual athletes.
Yeah, me too. I admire the athlete. Like yesterday I was watching a video of Tom Brady throw the football back into the thing that throws it out at you. I don't know what the fuck that thing's called. And he throws it in 3 times. And I'm like, this guy's a fucking freak. I admire the freaks. I admire the skill level. Like I always say, like the best athletes in the world, I truly believe, are football players. You have to be a monster of an athlete. You have to be super strong, super fast, agile. Even the big guys, the biggest guys, 300-pound fucking guys could run a 4.6. You're like, it's pretty impressive.
They're so like. So my brother played in the NFL for a couple of years, offensive lineman, and Andy's 6'5", was an All-American at Texas A&M, and 300 plus pounds. And like after now doing strongman and doing other sports with my brother and seeing him just be a freak athlete forever, I'm aware that he is the biggest, fastest, strongest, most mutant person most people ever meet in their entire lives. And he played 2 years in the NFL because he wasn't good enough to continue.
Yeah.
Right? Like that means that he was bottom of the barrel, and he's the biggest freak most people will ever get to meet. Like most people don't understand what a Tom Brady is. They don't even have a reference to realize how much of a mutant someone like that is. Whereas those of us who have trained and have reached some medium level of physical understanding and you're just crushed by it.
Yeah. I have my buddy Scott, who I've known for 15 years, right? Played in the NFL, played at UConn, the most decorated athlete to come out of UConn. Went to the NFL and was like maybe a special teams guy a couple games, right? And he walked into the CrossFit gym, strongest, fastest guy without even trying.
Right.
And he wasn't good enough to play in the NFL.
I know. And
so
it's not a knock on your friend. It's just that we finally have a measure of like, oh
yeah. Well, it's like what they say, like when people don't appreciate what goes on at the Olympics. And now I'm not one to watch the Olympics, but I like watching the highlights of like what people do. But if you were to put the average even you, right, or myself, like we're probably a little bit slightly above average. If you were to put us out there next to someone doing anything, throwing a javelin, running across the field, it would be so fucking pathetic, right?
I became like a 2-time world champion at a throwing sport.
Yeah.
There's a place good throwers go. It's called the Olympics. They don't go throw.
Yeah.
Right. I wasn't good enough to do the real one.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're such freaks. Not only that, like not only are they such freaks at the Olympic level, right? The ability to perform when it counts is so gnarly.
Yeah.
I'm always amazed by that. Like, what that takes mentally. The weird one for me are the guys that have it, right, to figure that out, that can train that way, perform that way physically, and do it when it counts, but can't figure out the other parts of life.
Yeah, I see that. You see that a lot. There are a lot of there's a ton of that.
No, it's absolutely crazy to me that they don't see the translate of like, yo, it's the same stuff, just do that work, but toward everything.
Yeah. I always say, like, I talk about this a lot when I talk about business. I always say I like to invest in people and not ideas, because the idea, a good idea. I mean, somebody at one point thought the DVD was a good idea, and we see how long that lasted,
for a bit,
right? But the guy who came up with it, and probably was responsible for some other really impressive shit too, right? So anybody who's doing, you start to see these same people. Like, that's why they have these CEOs jump from company to company, because they're like, they have an idea of like what works and what doesn't work, and they'll be able to reproduce what doesn't matter what they're selling. They'll figure it out and learn how to sell it. Right.
That's right. That like your profession could just be CEO. Like that's what you do for a living. You're like, I'm really good at CEOing.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. So like I work with this company called Ladder, and they're always like, oh, well, our CEO was the CEO of this, and and they're like, well, we're hiring the CEO from this to do this, and you're like, oh, I guess. Well, if you put CEO after your name, you're like more impressive than the average person.
I mean, look, I understand that that's a really weird thing, right? And like, kind of getting to be friends with other people who've done bigger business shit, and say that businesses sell or go public or whatever like that. It is weird to hear someone be honest enough to say, like, I have what it takes to get the boat to like 100 million in sales, but I'm not the guy to figure out how to get from 1 to 2.
Yeah.
And then like to have enough ego as someone who can build 0 to 100 and then be like, yeah, I should let someone else drive.
For sure.
Fucking heavy fucking handoff, man.
Well, that's what I just actually had a guy reach out to me. He was like, hey, man, I really want to help you with your brand. I love what you're doing. I see what you're doing, and it's super impressive. And he was like, what's your plan next? And I go, dude, I don't know what the next step is. I really don't. And I was like, I could get it off the ground, but now I need somebody else to drive the ship a little bit better. So that, I'm totally okay with realizing that there's a lot that I don't understand. There's a lot that I don't know, but it's like, I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to continue to go down that road. But there's a lot of people who have a lot of ego. They're like, well, I'll do everything. And I'm like, you can't. It's impossible to really get something going without the help of 100 people.
Of course, right? And also like all of those weird stories that you hear from everyone, right? Of like this negative story that this guy tried to steal from him, or they had this, and then like a shitty business partner, or all of it, right? Like I have to look back all the way now, like for when I had a bike shop and did all that, and like where all these checkpoints were. And then the ones that like I haven't hit yet that I know people and they're like, yo, we've just really struggled with X, Y, and Z. and it's always a problem. And if I don't
Yeah.
have that headache yet, like immediately going like, okay, so that's coming. Like,
Yeah.
we just be aware it's coming and don't freak out about it. So just be ready. And like, I think
Yeah.
that helps a lot. Like, of just like everyone who's done this well has run into these things. Like, just keep figuring it out. That's it. There's not a time.
Yeah.
Like, just don't die.
Yeah. No, I have a pretty successful client who's done some really cool shit in his life. And he's 59 years old and he's still working, trying to figure it out, and working and trying to figure it out. So it's like the grind never stops. It's like if you're passionate about what you're doing and you want to continue to do that thing, then you need to, restructure and reconfigure and reevaluate everything you're doing to learn how to do it better and to continue to do it. When you see an artist or a musician or an actor who's figured it out for decades, you're like, oh, that's impressive.
Impressive.
You stood the test of time. Like, that's what I think is the hardest.
I think that all the time. And you think about like, actors that you see that like aren't main guys, and then be like, you've done it. Like, you grind it out. Like, I think about like even say someone like a Samuel L. Jackson, right? Like, this is a big dude, but he was on the grind and has grinded.
Yeah.
And continued to work even though being a megastar. Yep. And I've seen interviews with him, and one of those things I love is, he's like, my father was X, Y, and Z, whatever his job was, and he's like, I grew up in a blue collar household, and my job was going to be acting. Then I'm going to work.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I mean, he started in like supporting roles and did that for years.
Yeah. I mean, the breakout being Pulp Fiction, but I mean, prior to that, I mean, he's still in Spike Lee movies and was, still acting.
Yeah. But yeah, he was, I think his first role was in Coming to America, wasn't it?
Is it?
I think when he's the guy who comes in the McDowell's to rob the place.
McDowell's.
And Eddie Murphy like kicks his ass, takes the gun from him. Yeah.
Oh man, what a cool first role.
Yeah.
What a really cool first role to be Samuel L. Jackson and not like that one thing I did.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, oh, that's where I started. Well, I always tell people, I go, I love horror movies. Like, so many people hate horror movies, but I was like, I love horror movies. I was like, who was the first person to die in Nightmare on Elm Street? Now, there's hundreds of people who die throughout the series, right? There's like, 8 or 9 movies, and there's hundreds of people that die in the movie. But the first person to die in all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. You know who it is?
It's not Johnny Depp, is it?
Johnny Depp.
It's fucking Johnny Depp. Yes!
Johnny Depp's the first person to die. Yeah. And I was like, that's where he started. There was that, and then he did 21 Jump Street.
Yeah, dude.
And now he lives on an island with fucking scars around him.
An island, right?
Yeah.
What a weird life. What a really weird existence that has to be. Or like a Leonardo DiCaprio, right? Like, you've killed it since you were a kid.
I know.
Well done. Yeah. Like, navigate.
Yeah. Everything he did was gold. Like, you put his name on a movie and you're like, yeah, it's going to do pretty well. Even if it's shit, it's going to do well.
That life has to be really tricky to navigate. Like, I think about like Justin Bieber or that level, and even you getting to be on TV for a bit, and like you got to be on TV before there was another avenue to get a bunch of eyes. Like, when you were on Road Rules, the challenge stuff, everyone fucking watched MTV.
Yeah. Yeah. When I first got on, it was a big deal.
Right. Like, I mean, do people ask you, like, how have you managed to transition that into the business stuff, or how to use that as a springboard?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are always like, oh, well, how'd you get on? How'd you make this happen? I was like, I really don't know. I mean, I used to say it was luck all the time, but it's like putting yourself out there to be lucky, right? The biggest criticism I get from everybody is that you're a yes man. You just say yes to everybody. I was like, I do. I was like, because I want to take every opportunity that I possibly can, because some of the best things in my life that have happened are when I put myself out there, when I try to do things that are out of my comfort zone. Like, I didn't want to go up there and try out for a show or know what to say. Like, there's no formula for it. I think because I was willing to be a little vulnerable and a little uncomfortable, then that's where I got to where I was. Even for me, I came off television and started working at an Equinox cleaning up weights. Do you realize how that feels? Like people are like, oh, why aren't you like being an actor? I'm like, oh, well, fucking Scorsese hasn't called me yet. So this is where I'm at, you know?
Right.
So, you know, that's, I mean, those are, but think about it. Like, had I not gone through that pain of like having to hand out towels and shit like that, I wouldn't be where I'm at. And I love what I do. Like I got up this morning at 5:30. You know, I'm not going to go to bed till 11:30 at best. Right. I'll be at the gym till 9 o'clock tonight, but I love it. And then when I get home, I'll fucking continue to figure out everything I need to figure out with the gym. It's like, it doesn't stop.
Dude, you know? I love hearing all that, man. And like, it's fun getting to talk to more people like in the hunt. Right.
Yeah.
It's one thing to talk to some people who are sitting a little bit and they feel like they've got some shit sorted out.
Yeah.
And the people in the hunt, like, I love it. I love the fucking energy of it. I love the willingness to choose to be uncomfortable. And that's that big one that I think a lot of people don't fucking get. And you said it through there. And I want to reiterate it, that, man, that choice to do things that are outside of your comfort zone is where everything happens. It's never been a negative for me to try to pursue that. There's a big difference between out of my comfort zone makes me anxious and this feels like something I don't want to fucking do. Fuck that. Like those aren't the same feelings.
For sure.
Man, like I got one right now that I'm uncomfortable with. And so I got invited. So Aubrey on it, they host a thing called Fit for Service, and it's kind of their business mastermind with entrepreneurs and stuff like that. And so we were chatting the other day where we were, we were texting back and forth, and I was asking about coming down to have him on the podcast. And he's like, when are you going to be in? And so I tell him, and he's like, oh, we're hosting the Fit for Service. And he's like, actually, one of the days of Fit for Service, we're hosting our tribal competition. So they're going to have a bunch of various games and stuff like that. And like, this thing it's all in, like full on serious for the people that are there. Like there's 5 tribes and they have like a big choreographed dance they're putting on and like all this like full in. And he's like, would you want to host and like MC the tribal thing? I'm like, yes. Like the first fuck yes. Of course I am. Because I don't get to say no. And then he asked again.
Yeah, for sure.
I know that.
Yeah.
The answer is yes. So I'll figure it out. Flights, blah, 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 blah. Like, not only that, like for people who don't understand, like trying to make the most of opportunities, I'm paying for all that.
Yeah.
They're not fucking flying me there to go host this. No, man, I'm going because I'm honored.
Yeah. I tell people that all the time. They're like, oh, you got to do this. I go, you know, I paid to do that.
Paid to do all these things.
Yeah. Like I spend a ton of money. You know, the first 4 CrossFit games I went to, I paid to be there. You know, the first couple of events I did, hosting events, I paid to go. They weren't paying me. They weren't like, oh yeah, we'd love to have you do this. It's not like they picked my name out of a fucking hat. I just started doing it for free. And that's when people started asking me to do it.
Yeah, that's how it works. I wrote for Mark Bell's magazine for 4 years for fucking free. Like I had an article damn near in every issue because my friend had a magazine and I could write. And so like, try. I mean, you have to do all that extra shit forever. It's always an investment back in you.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agree with that.
Dude, let's wrap this up. Where can people find all your stuff and want to train with you or any of those things?
Yeah, so I'm easy to find at Kenny Santucci on Instagram, and then at Strong New York is my company. And that's where we'll have all the updates on the gym. The gym will be on 28th and 5th Avenue. Our bread and butter is going to be small group training and semi-private training. So, that's where I've really kind of honed in on what I love to do and what I enjoy doing. And I love having more than just, 1 or 2 people around. So I like the small group training, the energy of having a lot of people there. And then, kind of we're doing the shirt thing and we're doing the gym thing and we're trying to get New York as strong as possible. One of the things I want to leave with is, I truly believe that you could heal the world just a little bit every day by strengthening yourself and strengthening people around you. Negative energy is contagious, but, great energy is even more contagious. I see it all the time. When somebody's feeling good, when somebody's fired up, they inspire other people to want to do that. Why we're doing what we do is because we saw someone else really crush it in the gym, on a podcast, wherever it may be. And you're like, fuck, that gets me fired up. And we devote our lives to it. So I tell people all the time, it's like, start doing something that inspires other people that, you feel is infectious and contagious, and keep going with that.
Yeah. And find that thing that makes you want to do more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that. Oh man. It always weirds me out the idea that people don't have that thing, like that obsession in their life. But dude, thank you so much. And,
it was a complete honor being on here, man. Thank you so much.
We'll do this more, dude. And perhaps once you get all set up, man, this needs to be my I need to go up. I haven't been to New York in a really long time, and it would be a great excuse.
We're going to do hopefully a big event when we do the opening. And I think I've spoke to you about this once before, but I'd love to have you come up and be a guest speaker at the event.
Would absolutely do, man. Be complete on. Anyway, Kenny, thank you so much, and thank you guys for listening.
Thank you, Matt.